All right, hi, this is Annie. I'm recording an interview with my grandfather for PCM1 for our cultural project. All right, can you tell me your name and how you and me are related, and just a little bit about yourself?
My name is Bhuvanesh Goswami, and I'm Annie's grandfather.
Yeah.
Her dad, we adopted him when he was about 10 or 11 years old. And he has been with us, went through school, and we are now living in Clemson. And he also came to Clemson to get his master's degree when we moved here in horticultural therapy. And I know when Annie was born, so I've known Annie since she came to this world.
Awesome. So you worked at Clemson?
Yes, I've taught at Clemson. I actually joined Clemson in 1967, left, and then after 15 years we came back to Clemson.
Cool.
And retired from Clemson in 2006.
Awesome. And what brought you to the U.S. from India?
Well, it's a long story, but I'm going to make it short. I had just finished my PhD in 1966, and I went back to India. That's where I'm from. And at that time, towards the end of 1966, my professor happened to be here in Clemson giving a talk. They had started their graduate program, and they didn't have anybody to teach in their graduate program. So the administration at Clemson in the textile department asked him if he could suggest somebody to come and teach here in the graduate program, and he mentioned my name. Then my professor asked me if I would like to come and for a year. I was reluctant, but I agreed. And the Clemson, I talked to the dean, associate dean at Clemson in the textile department of Clemson University, and they agreed yes to my conditions, and I came to Clemson in 1967.
Awesome. And so now we'll get into more of your religion. Can you give us a brief description of the Hindu religion?
Yes. When we talk about Hindu religion, I'm a Hindu, if you call that in the Western terms. We call it Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means the old Sanatan philosophy, which we belong to, which comes from the Vedas. Vedas don't preach any religion. Vedas essentially is a poem. It's a long poem. The first Veda is the Rig Veda, which actually essentially talks about relation between human beings and all the creations on the earth, whether it's animals, whether it's sea animals, everything on the face of this earth, including vegetation, its relationship to human being and how we interact with each other. And that's essentially what Hindu philosophy is, because we worship in Hindu philosophy, we worship the trees, we worship the animals, we worship even the rocks. So if you talk about Hindu practices, there is no one such practice, but Hindus do have some of those mantras or shlokas, which essentially talk about the greatness of nature, and which talks about essentially peace on earth for everything. And I think I will, at the end of this talk, I will actually chant that particular mantra. So that's what essentially Hindu philosophy is. There are four Vedas, and they deal with, first of all, human relationship to the nature. Then they also deal with your physical being, physical and mental, essentially welfare. And at the same time, they also talk about the economy of the humanity. They talk about essentially what kinds of foods we eat, and how we keep our body in good shape through the practice of yoga. So that is also a part of what you might call the Hindu philosophy.
Awesome. Well, thank you. What are some of your common practices? I know that when we traveled there together as a family, we went to a lot of temples, and we saw a lot of different statues and just some really cool stuff. So what are some of the things that you guys do?
In Hindu philosophy, over centuries, the sages talked about essentially our relationship again to the nature. And so the philosopher created the mythologies, and those mythologies, within the mythologies, you have to have some kind of a focus. So you create the gods and goddesses. For example, there are gods for learning, which is essentially Saraswati, the goddess for wealth, that is Lakshmi, the god for well-being, Lord Krishna, god for essentially death, which is Lord Shiva, and god for creation, which is Brahma, Vishnu. So there actually is a trinity which we worship in one sense, but then they have their incarnations over the centuries. So Hindus just don't focus on one particular god. Every Hindu, if you may call him, has his or her own deity. That can be a person in the form of a person, or in the form of a woman, or in the form, even essentially in the form of an animal, which is where the Lord Vishnu has incarnations in 9 avatars, which include even the what do you call it? Just stop it for a minute.
Okay.